Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. In today's video, I'll be giving you my thoughts and impressions on Chapter 15 of the game's story, Light and Shadow. This chapter just released yesterday at the time of recording, so if you want to avoid any story spoilers, be advised that I'm going to talk about everything in the main campaign up through Chapter 15, as well as possibly a few minor things from events that could be relevant to the main plot. So I want to put that on the table. If you haven't played through this yet, I strongly suggest you do so on your own to get to experience the story. This time around, I'm not going to be reading and reacting to every single detail in the story, just because I found that doing that with chapters, they're pretty long and it can be kind of fatiguing. Ultimately, I think it kind of detracts from my overall enjoyment of the story, so I decided to just read it through on my own and basically sleep on it and make this video the day after the fact. It's also a plus that I get to listen to the Japanese audio. That's pretty cool because it's fully voiced in Japanese, the story is, so I get to enjoy a little bit of the emotion behind it. Unfortunately, it's not fully voiced in English, but I wish it was, but it's just not. So yeah, that's the way I approach things this time. You're not going to get to listen to me butcher all the characters' lines as I often do. But overall, I would say I really like this chapter. And I've had nitpicks with the story in the past. Honestly, how I feel is the things I didn't like about this chapter are mostly plot elements. And I really don't care too much about what happens in the plot at this point. Like, a lot of things have happened in the story where I feel like it's sort of arbitrary or information is concealed from us for no other reason than to extend the plot. But basically, what made this chapter a hit for me was the characterization of different people and different groups. In particular, the Agito. I love the Agito as villains. Volk is number one in my heart. He has really ascended to being my favorite character, favorite Agito battle in the game. Like, I really like Volk after what he did last chapter. And obviously Devin Mack, amazing talent, so shout out to Devin for voicing Volk in English. But overall, that made this chapter super fun for me, just seeing the Agito assemble, right? Seeing their interactions. What I've often wondered is, how does this group of incredibly powerful individuals with really radical ideas stick together? And why do they stick together when in some cases their ideas almost feel like they could be in contrast to one another? And to get to see them interact was really a treat. We got to even see Kayan and the twins, who I don't think have made an appearance in past story chapters from what I remember. And we got our first look at Tartarus, even though he didn't really say anything, but he's coming up later this month, so I'm going to give some speculation as to what I think his whole shtick might be. But given this chapter ended up on the shorter side, what I'll do to kind of go through my impressions piece by piece is I'm going to click into these story vignettes. We'll see a moment or so, but I'll hit the skip button so we can just read the summary of what happened. And I really want to do it for this because look at this glorious, glorious scene. Now, obviously, it's a sad scene, but these are the types of moments that really get me excited about the campaign. So you can see Nedrick and Valix. We find out essentially what happened to Valix. We were counting heads a few chapters or interludes ago about, was he really ambushed by the Agito or not? Because the count of characters that ambushed him, I think it was like slightly wrong to be the Agito in the sense that the twins are two people. Well, it turns out the twins fused together, so it kind of lines up, although Nedrick's an extra person, so maybe it doesn't quite line up. In any case, it was resolved without question at this point that yes, Nedrick and party ambushed Valix and his soldiers. And to go ahead and hit skip here so we can read the summary, it says, Valix's army, which marched north to deal with invaders, has been wiped out. Having laid him low, the enigmatic Nedrick formulates a plan to use his fallen foe. Meanwhile, with events at the palace leaving them in disarray, the prince's party heads for the border via a mountain pass. So, I'll talk about my feelings on Valix as we get later in the chapter. I like Valix a lot as a character. So, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of disappointed to see him defeated by Nedrick, because I really put a lot of stock in Valix's ability and capacity. And that's one of my overall nitpicks with things is like, haven't our main characters, like, haven't a lot of our characters, powered up by now to a point where they're just not getting wiped out by Nedrick? Like, Nedrick is too OP. We've defeated these Agito so many times on various difficulties. So it happens often in the story. This happened with the Doomsday Getaway as well for me, where I was like, can't you just fly off of Sila's island? Is the invisible wall around the ocean really stopping you? Y'all can open gates to other worlds. You can use your fragments to travel. Like, there's probably a way that your magic is stronger than Sila's magic by now, right? You know, like, Cleo, you have a mana spiral, use it a little bit, do something, with it. That's how I felt about this, where I was like, really? Who are you, Nedrick? You're really gonna take out Valix like this? And what made me sad was to see Valix's will subjugated. And it was kind of interesting the way Nedrick talked to him about Valix's true desires and kind of how he would actually make a good king, because ultimately he wanted to just fall in line for the sake of minimizing the conflict and the suffering of the people. So there was some interesting dynamic there, but I was still kind of sad. I was like, really? Valix should just, like, one-shot this guy. Nedrick? I mean, who's Nedrick? He shouldn't be as powerful as he is, in my opinion. And this has been a thing that happened before, right? Like, Baron just comes out of nowhere, ungodly powers, destroys Morsayati. I feel like it's a little over the top. Like, we should be putting up a better fight than we are at times. That goes for characters, that goes for characters like Valix too, who aren't even in our main party. So let's look at Mountain Face-Off. The second segment is where Ciela intercepts us, and she's kind of taunting the party, taunting Elisanne in particular about the fact that she's still keeping a secret from the party. We get some questioning by Alex, which I think is very appropriate. So this says, while struggling through the rugged mountain path, the prince once again thanks Xena for encouraging and guiding him to this point. Suddenly, Ciela appears and discloses that Elisanne is hiding something before provoking the party into battle. Alright, so as for the inclusion of a Ciela boss fight, I liked it. I would certainly take that over a random fiend fight, like a fight against a golem or the little squirrel enemy or a wolf or whatever. Even though these are still reused boss fights, it's fun to see them in a different arena. And it's pretty challenging. I mean, it's as challenging as the normal boss fight with worse stats, but mechanically it's interesting. So I'd much prefer to see this type of thing in the main campaign than just like a generic fiend enemy. Anyway, as for the whole Elisanne kerfuffle and her feelings about not wanting to tell everyone that she knows something about Yuden's true identity, this is where I feel like the plot hasn't really satisfied me, but I'm also not here for the plot. I'm here for the one-liners, for the, what Nott has to say, what Ciela has to say. And so what I liked about this was Ciela called out the group's attitude toward friendship as something that really was just a matter of convenience almost. And it actually got me thinking. I mean, Ciela has a way with words, as do all our Agito characters, but it got me thinking about the nature of DL itself. I mean, when I think about how I play and experience Dragalia, I'm often playing with other players who, I meet by coincidence in a random lobby, or maybe I only know through Discord. I don't have a lot of real-life friends who play Dragalia. And to a certain extent, she's right with her comments about that, about how the Halidom is sort of like a hodgepodge of characters who have randomly come together and coalesced around this individual, Yuden in this case. But as for the summary, it says, as Ciela and the prince fight, she cuts the battle short and vanishes. Alex urges Elisanne to share what she's hiding, but the prince rescues her from the uncomfortable situation. This makes Xena uneasy, and she worries the prince's kindness may hurt him in the end. So as for Xena, or Xena, I'm not a fan of hers. I don't really care for her interaction with the prince / Yuden. I just think that they're really playing into the brother-sister thing. And for me, her attitude, given what you would presume she knows about the world and the horrors and atrocities she's seen in countless, or as she says, uncountable worlds, right? I just feel like she has a very soft stance toward Yuden. And I feel like she's instantly usurped, like, all the other main crew. Like, why don't you talk to your boy Ronzel, Yuden? You've been with him since the beginning. You just met Zena last chapter. And you're gonna go to her and she's like your confidant now and your BFF? What about Luca, okay? He's been there since the beginning, even though he wasn't actually represented in much of the story. But anyway, that's my feeling about her, is like, I guess it's because she's gonna get a gala eventually and she's new, so they're playing her up, but like, I don't even think Laxi was in this chapter. Why don't you go to Laxi and Mascula for advice, Yuden? Anyway, that's my feeling about her. I don't really like her. I kind of wish, well, we'll get to that. There's something I wish would have happened to her toward the end of the chapter. But then, middle of the mountain, section 3, this was so random. Why was this a node on the map? This is, I believe, the squirrel boss, although if you look here, you can see a bison, an eye fly, so maybe it's one of those boss enemies. There's a slime here, but like, why is this a node on the map? There's no story element. It's just a fight, so I guess, you know, this is kind of whatever. It felt like it didn't really need to be here. Okay, EX. We got another cube fight, neutral element, which is kind of interesting. I haven't looked into any of the decodings for this yet, so I'm not sure how exciting or not exciting those may be. Another EX battle, but Agito Assembly. Oh, be still my heart. This was my favorite part of the chapter. I'll go ahead and play through this on auto while I talk about it, so that you can sort of just watch what happens. But, yeah, this basically showed all of the different Agito characters and their motivations in ways that I don't think we have fully seen before. So I really like this, as much as I felt bad for this nobleman that Volk was attacking. I just really like this whole segment. And what's interesting to me is how these people stick together. What kind of person is Nedrick to actually compel these people to want to stick together and follow him, an authority figure, to whatever his ultimate goal is? Like, that's kind of crazy. And so are the Agito. So as for Volk, what I really wanted to see happen, and I don't know if this is going to happen, but I just want Volk to just like murder Kayan. I'm sorry, Kayan, you're a cool guy, you're a pretty powerful dude, you're very buff, but Kayan's attitude about the weak not deserving to exist and calling them, and life being about battles between the strong and survival of the fittest, doesn't it feel a little bit antithetical to what Volk is about? Like, Volk just, I feel like Volk is too cool to hang out with Kayan. Volk would just like plague Kayan and send him back to his continent, since one of the things that Kayan says in this is that he's just gonna, like, everybody on this continent is weak, so they're gonna be culled by him. Okay, this characterization right here between the twins and playing with their dolls was extremely creepy when you realize what's happening, and it's honestly one of the most upsetting things to me in the chapter, at the end of the chapter, what happens, which we'll get into. But I do think this gave me more of a window into what the twins are like and kind of the craziness about them. I really didn't get a lot of that from their first interaction with Laxi, and the fact that they're all about entertainment and freedom. Like, that was sort of hard to convey how that differed from Laxi and Mascula and kind of their obedience, being androids or whatever. So I think that this was a really dark portrayal of them, like one of the darkest we've had. Obviously, if you can't tell, they're basically using the dead bodies of these villagers as their dolls to play with, which is very disturbing. Here we go with Kayan. As much as I want Volk to just like kill off Kayan for no reason, he decides to just call these two people that are squabbling, which I really don't get. I mean, none of these Agito have a completely coherent philosophy, because Volk himself is strong enough to oppress and damage others. So he's sort of hypocritical. All of them are sort of hypocritical. In this scene, two weak people are fighting. It feels like something Kayan should be okay with. Like, he's all about violence, like progress through violence and whatever. But then he says, weaklings who cannot protect themselves gather together to exult in peaceable lives. It is a most unsightly thought. You have not earned the right of survival, and so shall be destroyed utterly. So did Volk earn the right of survival? I mean, he's calling out weaklings, right? Volk has got to challenge this man. He's going unchecked. Anyway, I think it's just delightful. Ciela, besides her comments about friendship, you know, her unwavering disdain for the Ilian faith is interesting. I don't know what's going to happen as far as future story chapters, but they are getting into the realm of the faith a lot more, with the interlude mentioning a specific city in North Grastia, the way this ended, and the fact that they're taking Zethia, the Auspex of the Ilian faith. You would assume that Ciela, I mean, with her hatred of the Church of Ilia, would just kill off the Auspex. Like, doesn't that seem like something that would fulfill her vision of wanting to rid the world of deception? I don't know. It's kind of odd. She seems to revel in the revelation that people have to the deception of the world. So again, it's another instance of how crazy these characters are and how their philosophies are not really fully formed. But that's what I love about them. They're so interesting. They're so interesting to me. So I like this segment. Of course, we're going to get Tartarus coming in next. And Tartarus, what I'm expecting for him, at least one theory I have, is obviously he's Greek in origin, at least his name is. I see him as having an association with death and the underworld. What I looked up was that Tartarus referred to either a deity or the realm in which the Titans were kept and other things were imprisoned. It's not really quite the underworld, but it's just a realm that they were imprisoned and kept in, something like that. What I think his contrast or conflict with Cleo might be is Cleo is a long-lived character. She's well beyond the age of most of the characters because of her slumber in the Halidom. Maybe he has some kind of gripe with her because of the way she's been able to cheat death or something like that, or maybe it has to do with memory and history and whatever she did in her past life before we actually got to meet her. But that's kind of what I think, is maybe he's sort of like, you know, everybody has to die. Cleo, you've outlived what's natural, and you're not really part of the natural order that I see in the world, and so it's time for me to take you to the underworld or whatever. Again, may not be that, but that's kind of what I hope, and that's kind of what I got a vibe of from just his costume and his outfit. So I already mentioned this was just a filler, middle of the mountain, so now let's talk about Border Checkpoint. This had a ton of story segments, and this is where things kind of fell apart for me. The way that Yuden reacted to the revelation here was very disappointing to me. I'm not going to lie, but moments like, and I guess it's not here, but where we see the overall span of all of the Agito, and it's kind of a panoramic shot, those types of things kept me going through this. But let's hit the skip. Let's see what this says. The party arrives at the checkpoint to find Valix waiting for them. Wishing to test his own capacity, he challenges the prince. Though confused by his unusual behavior, the prince nevertheless meets his brother in combat. At this point, I couldn't tell whether this was Valix's genuine intention to test whether Yuden was actually fit to rule as king, or if this was Nedric manipulation. He didn't have the mask on at this point, so it's possible that, you know, Nedric convinced him, or he just decided, let me test what Yuden is made of. But later he gets the mask, and that's the part I just really didn't like. It's not the most attractive mask, it's not the most compelling look for Valix, but he's just such a strong character. Like, it made me sad to see him in bondage like that. Like, that was not a good look for this, I think. So, we beat Valix, but Nedric appears with Zethia and the rest of the Agito. He produces a historical tome and claims that he is the true 7th Scion, one swapped out with Yuden in the cradle. The stunned party is then attacked by Valix, who is being controlled by a strange mask. Alright, let's watch this one in auto while I talk, since I think this is one where we're going to get the panoramic shot of the Agito appearing, but maybe not. What's going on, Valix? So maybe this is just the mask, and we may have missed that really cool scene already in the previous segment. But yeah, I don't love that mask, man. I feel like do the mind control, but with the object, even the mind control itself kind of bothers me, honestly. If you have a power like that, like you could do a lot of really despicable things. So, I don't know. You could just use that on the Prince or on Zephy or whatever your goal is, right? So anyway, I guess this is where the Agito get revealed. But the whole tome thing, again, this is another area to me where I start to nitpick, and I know I should just suspend disbelief, but like, we have incredible magic in this world. Do you really just trust this tome? You know, like the fact that it doesn't light up? Like, I don't know. It just seems kind of like the basest form of magic possible. Like, can't we just cast a dispel on that? Like, prove that it's fake? I don't know. It just felt a little bit off to me that, like, this document is so definitive and convincing. Like, it could be totally forged in a realm in which dragons just roam and people have the ability to cast spells. Like, I didn't find it to be very compelling whatsoever. And what also really bothered me, but when you see this, how can you complain? Look at this. Look at this shot. This is just the best shot I've seen. Yeah. Stuff like this does get me super hyped. Not gonna lie. But what I didn't like, and we'll probably see it in a second, is Yuden's reaction. His facial expression when he finds out the truth, it feels wrong. I mean, he just, like, his eyes really bothered me. Something about them just really bothered me. I was like, this guy has so little resolve at this point after everything he's been through that this is what's going to defeat him. But then I realized I really shouldn't be surprised in Yuden. Yuden is the person who was willing to sacrifice himself to Sayadi, right? This is not a good character. This is not somebody we should aspire to be like. This is a very deeply flawed character who invites everybody into the Halidom, who has a lot of troubles as a leader, is a very naive person. So when I thought about it a little bit more, I felt like, actually, this is kind of consistent with what Yuden is kind of like. He's just kind of not that good of a protagonist in some ways, and maybe that's supposed to be what's compelling about him. But his singular obsession with his sister and his whole, the fact that he got upset at all about this revelation that he's not actually royalty, like, who cares about this? Does this really matter? Should this even matter to you? This mattered very little to me. I'm here for Volk. I'm here for Tartarus. Nedrick, you know, take it or leave it. I don't like that he's so powerful for no reason, but okay. The swapped at birth thing is something I had accidentally predicted because I misremembered one of the interludes and I thought it said something about Finlorda swapping them at birth, but it turns out it said that Yuden had died of Wormscale, and so it turned out there was a swapped at birth thing, but I just misremembered it in a previous story video, so it kind of worked out how I assumed it would work out in the end. So they're reading this. I don't know. Let's get to that face so you can see how he reacts. I just feel like it's just... I'm so disappointed in Yuden, but I will say in a moment that I relate to him a lot as well. And I'll get into that. But look at this. Oh, look at this face. There's something about this. It's like, really? You know, this is what mentally destroys you? Like, it looks like a mind break or something. And I just felt like that was this was way beyond the gravity of this. Like, this has been building up for so many chapters now that I found it almost to just be like a whatever moment when this was revealed, because we already know about all this. So to see Yuden in such shock and disbelief, and like everybody's shocked. Well, they don't believe it at first, but then they get shocked when the tome test happens with the light up nightlight or whatever. Yeah, I wasn't really buying it. I just wasn't feeling it, unfortunately. Let us continue, though. So, I guess that was his light and shadow. Next up is the truth emerges, and then Auspex is together and in the wake of defeat, and then we'll end things off. Ultimately, the way that the story ended, we're fighting. Valix transforms. Thor boss fight, fantastic. Thor, majestic. I mean, he looks great. The combo mechanics are awesome. Good news about Thor. I think he'll probably be a Gala Dragon. Like, he's going to be pretty cool. He looks fun. I mean, the way he engaged in the battle was enjoyable, even on normal difficulty. So I'm excited about Thor. I liked all of that. But let's continue reading. Urged on by Nedrick, the prince takes up the tome. When he does, the book's radiance, which glows only in response to one of royal blood, fades. The prince then shapeshifts and attempts to fight, but is defeated by Nedrick, who moves to deliver the finishing blow. Okay, we'll play a little bit of it again. The tome test, like I said, the official document thing, it holds no water. Like, it has no credence to me. I just think it's kind of like a plot device, which it is. But why is everybody so shocked and upset by this? It doesn't make sense to me, unfortunately. But the fact that Nedrick is also so powerful, Yuden transforms into Midgardsormr, which is not his best dragon. I don't know why he's using Midgardsormr, but obviously for plot reasons he's using Midgardsormr. He could use High Midgardsormr, Astral Midgardsormr, but he just uses regular Midgardsormr. And it doesn't work out well for him, and I can't really say I'm that surprised. He's just not a very strong protagonist. Like, they've never really characterized him with the full power that he actually has, or the power that he wields via the Halidom and all its inhabitants. So it is what it is. That's kind of what's going to continue happening, just so we can have harder and harder villains to defeat. Essentially, villain power creep is a normal thing. But Auspex is together. Yuden is going to die, essentially. A finishing blow is going to be delivered. And what happens is, it says Auspex is together, but the person who saves Yuden is actually Valix. And I thought this was an excellent moment for Valix to have the willpower to overcome this mind control mask, which I think sucks, and I'm sad that Valix had to go through this. Unfortunately, I think Valix is essentially left for dead. Because what happens after this is that the two Auspexes, first of all, Xena, conspires to teleport everybody away using her powers. Why does she not teleport Valix or his body away? I do not know. But she doesn't have the full power to do it, and so Zethia steps up and grants everybody some of her powers, invokes Ilia, invokes Elysium, gets this aura around everybody that gives Xena the power to teleport everyone. At the last minute, Yuden wants Zethia teleported with them to safety. Zethia decides to stay with Agito. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really care about Zethia. I don't think she's really a developed character in any way. Maybe if they show her more in an interlude. I can't relate to Yuden on his obsession with Zethia. Like, can we rule the kingdom and ensure the peace now that Merciati is gone? What are we doing here? What are we doing here trying to get Zethia? But again, should I really be surprised? This is the person who was going to sacrifice himself to Merciati. So it is what it is. But I don't like Xena. I don't like Zethia. I don't like Yuden. I don't like Elisam. I like all the other characters, though. So there's reasons for me to keep playing and enjoying things. Let's skip and see what it says. Valix overcomes the mask's power and saves the prince from Nedrick's attack. While Zethia raises the defensive barrier, Xena tries to use her power to whisk the party to safety. Zethia, however, decides to stay behind and is separated from the prince once more. It's such a Zethia move. It's such a Yuden move, right? Leave yourself behind. So the threat that Nedrick makes to kill all of them if she goes with them, I guess is placated. I'm not buying it. I'm not really feeling it. Anyway, we get to the end. We're back in the Halidom. Yuden is upset because he's not of royal blood. And the Agito were happy. They were excited that he got this, mind-breaking revelation. It ends up being Xena, the one that cheers him up, essentially, when he's in his quarters. And he sort of says that he has a new lease on things and he's going to become a new self. But let me read through it. Having escaped Agito, the party returns to the Halidom, frustrated at his inability to rescue Zethia. The prince argues with his friends and confines himself in his room. However, he is able to rally thanks to Xena's encouragement and decides to seek out his brother Leonidas. Let's proceed so we can see the preview of the next story chapter. His decision to find Leonidas and get some answers, I think, is a good one. this is the first good decision that Yuden has made in a while, since there are crazy things happening in the world right now, right? Ferris and Baron, Nedric going to North Gracia, Leonidas was supposed to protect him, obviously didn't get there in time or really do anything, but now we're going to reunite with Leonidas in Valkahim. The Peace of Alberia is threatened once more. The people rise up and dragons rain destruction. I'm liking that. Facing danger most dreadful, the group finds its fate in the hands of a lone paladin and Alberia's eldest prince. Interesting, the lone paladin part. A new chapter in the story of Man and Dragon is about to begin. All this and more in the next campaign update. Alright, so that's pretty much it. I mean, my feelings toward the end of this chapter are, this is what I don't like about the main campaign. This is why I would say I'm not really playing for the plot reasons. What I like is just the characters, their motivations. They're kind of interesting, at least the Agito to me, much more interesting than like Yuden. But what I wanted to comment on as far as relating to Yuden, I do think after playing through this, I kind of felt what Yuden was going through, because when you're in a role of leadership to a certain extent, you can lose your way. I mean, there are a lot of challenges. You try to do the best you can. You try to do what's right for your community and your people. You also have some ideals and goals of your own that you want to pursue. So I feel like as a member of this community who has somewhat of a platform via YouTube and via Discord, that has been a huge struggle for me. I mean, that has really been something that racks my brain a lot, is like, am I doing the right thing? Am I set up in the right way? Are people able to enjoy themselves and have a good time? Are things too prohibitive, not prohibitive enough? Like, what should we do? So I would say, as far as Yuden, in terms of like welcoming me every bit to the Halidom, I have a lot of the same flaws as Yuden. When I was thinking about it, I was like, that's kind of representative of me in a lot of ways. So at the end of the day, after playing through this chapter, I did kind of appreciate that fact, where I was like, you know, he's doing his best. He's just doing his best. We're all just trying to do our best right now and make it through things. I'm giving this guy a hard time. I'm giving the story a hard time when it's always been like this. Like, I don't think this isn't really a decline in my mind, nor was last chapter with like Elisand's whole secret gimmicky thing that she was doing. This is just kind of how things are in the story. But as long as there are moments to continue to delight and surprise me, like the moments with the Agito, I will probably keep playing through these, reacting to them, giving my impressions, and overall enjoying things along the way. It's a fun ride to get through the story, and I'm excited about what's to come in the future. I do want to say, I was so upset that Valix got left behind. Like, are you kidding me? Valix got left behind, and then the twins are going to use him as a puppet, as a doll. Like, that, I found that to be outrageous, that they treated Valix so badly in this chapter. So R.I.P. Valix, I hope you're actually not dead. I hope you're alive. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, because it didn't really look too promising for you. But I do have a feeling we're going to get Galathor very soon. Maybe we'll have more details via Galathor's story or the next interlude. Anyway, y'all, that is going to do it for this video, everyone. I'd love to hear what you thought about the chapter in the comments below. But otherwise, take care. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.